What if I told you that a child's paralysis wasn't caused by a broken spine, but by a broken heart? That a barefoot boy from an alley could do what the world's best doctors could not? This isn't just a story about healing. It's about the hidden damage we carry and the steps we never see until it's too late. But what if someone refused to look away? In a city divided by privilege and pain, one silent girl, one forgotten boy, and one grieving father are about to rewrite what we think is possible, not through medicine, but through belief, forgiveness, and a secret buried in the past. Stay with us, because this journey leads to a truth that may just change how you see the world. If this story moved you or made you think, don't keep it to yourself. Click the like button, share this video, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional and powerful stories like this, where mystery meets meaning and healing begins where logic ends. Tell us in the comments, have you ever experienced a moment where someone simply listening made all the difference? We'd love to hear your story. The wheels of the wheelchair squeaked faintly against the wet pavement. Rain slid down the curved glass walls of the storefronts, cascading like silent tears over mannequins in frozen poses. Asher Langford adjusted his grip on the handles and looked down at his daughter. "Cold?" he asked quietly. Lila didn't respond. She never did anymore. Wrapped in her knitted blue blanket, her blonde hair slightly damp and clinging to her cheek, she stared down at her motionless legs with the same blank expression she wore every day. Once a fearless whirlwind of cartwheels and tree climbs, now she barely blinked. Asher exhaled slowly. 2 years. 2 years of hospitals and specialists and miracle workers. 2 years of hope being whittled down until it was nothing but dust and polite dismissals. The city had changed too. Or maybe he was just seeing it clearly for the first time. Graffiti on marble, cracked, sidewalks beside luxury, wealth and despair holding hands. They turned onto 5th and Knox, a quieter block where old shops stood shuttered. That's when the voice came. "Mister, I know who can make her walk again." Asher froze. The voice was small but sure, not begging or pleading, just speaking. He looked to the side and saw a boy in the shadows of a narrow alleyway. Dark-skinned, no shoes, an oversized hoodie soaked from the rain. Maybe 10, maybe younger. Asher's first instinct was to keep walking, but the boy's eyes were steady. "What did you say?" he asked, tightening his grip on the handles. "I said I know who can help her." Asher's jaw tightened. "Who put you up to this?" "No one," the boy said. "I saw you here last week. I waited. You've been watching us." "Not in a creepy way," the boy said quickly. "Just, she looked like she used to run, like her legs forgot." For the first time in days, Lila's eyes shifted. She looked toward the alley, toward the boy. Asher noticed. "Listen, kid, we've seen every kind of doctor there is, but not my grandmother." That made Asher scoff. "She's not a doctor, I assume. She doesn't take money. Just trust." Lila turned her face to her father. "Please," she said. Just one word, but it was enough. Asher knelt, caught off guard. "If anything feels wrong, we leave." She nodded. They followed the boy, his name was Micah, past the line where the city gave up pretending. The polished storefronts gave way to rusted fences, crooked telephone poles, and overgrown lots. "Where exactly are you taking us?" Asher asked. "Almost there," Micah said. "She doesn't live far, just far enough for people to stop looking." Lila winced each time the wheelchair hit a bump. Asher apologized under his breath, hating every crack in the road. They reached a stretch of chain-link fence, then ducked through a gap behind a warehouse. On the other side was a path Asher never knew existed, a trail swallowed by trees, vines, and mist. The trail led to a small clearing. In its center stood a wooden cottage, worn but standing proud, surrounded by a garden gone wild with herbs and wind chimes. An older woman stepped onto the porch as though she'd been waiting. Silver hair hung in braids laced with bark and thread. Her eyes, green and steady, met Lila's. "I was wondering when you'd bring them," she said to Micah. Micah nodded. He didn't believe, but she did. The woman smiled. "Child," she said gently, kneeling before Lila. "May I touch your knees?" Asher looked alarmed. Lila looked at him. He gave the faintest nod. The woman placed her hands softly on Lila's legs. The wind slowed, even the rain seemed to hush. And just like that, they stepped over a threshold no one could see. Inside the cottage, time seemed to hold its breath. The scent of dried lavender and smoke hung gently in the air. Shelves lined the walls, filled with glass jars, feathers, roots, and tiny cloth-wrapped bundles. A kettle hissed softly on a wood-burning stove. Maribel moved like she belonged to the room, or perhaps the room belonged to her. Her long skirt swept the wooden floor as she walked toward Lila. She knelt again, placing both hands on Lila's knees with care, not force. "You may not believe in much anymore," she said, glancing at Asher, "but the body listens to the heart, even when the mind tries to forget." Asher folded his arms. "She has permanent spinal damage. That's not a feeling. That's a diagnosis. Then let her feel for herself," Maribel replied, not unkindly. "Let her be the one to say what's possible." Lila's eyes never left Maribel's. Maribel closed her eyes and began to hum, a low, melodic sound like wind brushing through trees. Her thumbs gently pressed into Lila's knees. The sound filled the room, not loud, but impossibly present. Lila flinched. Asher stepped forward. "What was that?" I felt something," Lila whispered. Maribel opened her eyes slowly. "Where?" "My toes. They tingled like when your foot wakes up." Asher looked between them. Placebo, reflex, something explainable. Maribel only nodded as though she'd heard it all before. She felt, that is enough for today. While Maribel prepared tea with leaves from her garden, Lila looked around the room. Her voice was soft when she spoke. "It smells like my mom here, not her perfume. Like when she hugged me after baking." Asher stiffened. Micah looked at her curiously. What was she like? "She made people feel warm, even when she didn't say much." Maribel poured the tea with steady hands. "That scent lives in memory, and memory can make the body remember too." Asher accepted the tea reluctantly. "Memory won't fix nerve endings." "No," she said, "but it might unfreeze what grief has locked away." Maribel stood behind Lila's wheelchair. "Only if you want to, child. Only if your heart says yes." Lila looked at her father. His face was unreadable, but he gave a small nod. Micah gently moved the wheelchair back. Lila placed her palms on the arms of the chair, trembling. She lifted herself. One foot quivered, then pressed down, then the other. She stood. The room held its breath. Tears ran silently down Asher's cheeks. He fell to his knees in front of her. "Lila!" She wobbled, then placed a hand on his shoulder for balance. "I'm standing, Daddy. I'm really standing." Later, when Lila rested in a woven chair, a blanket around her legs, Asher pulled Micah aside. "What is this place? Who is she?" Micah shrugged. "Someone who listens, that's all. Why help us? Because she helped me, and I believe others can be whole again." Asher reached for his wallet. "Let me at least pay you. For your time. For this." Micah shook his head. "We don't need money. We just need people to stop looking away." Outside, the rain had stopped. The wind whispered through the trees, almost like it was singing. The next morning, light spilled through the cottage windows in long golden bands. For the first time in months, Lila woke before her father. Her legs still felt foreign, like forgotten instruments, but the tingling hadn't faded. She eased herself upright and called softly, "Dad." Asher startled awake in the rocking chair near her bed. "Lila." She smiled sleepily. "Can I try again today?" He blinked, as if he hadn't fully processed the question. Then he exhaled. "We'll ask Maribel." From the other room, the sound of the kettle whistling rose like a greeting. Lila giggled. The sound startled Asher more than anything. While Lila practiced standing with Maribel and Micah in the garden, Asher stepped back inside the cottage. Alone, he scanned the bookshelves and wooden walls, eyes drawn to a dusty photograph tucked behind a wooden carving. He pulled it out. The image was faded but clear enough. Maribel stood beside a much younger woman holding a toddler. The woman dark hair, striking eyes, a half-smile that tugged at memory, was someone Asher couldn't place, but somehow felt he should. He flipped the photo over. No names, just a symbol, a small spiral drawn in pen. Micah appeared behind him. That was my mom. Asher turned. You knew her? She knew you, Micah said quietly. Micah picked up the photograph and looked at it with something like reverence. Her name was Delia. She brought me here when I was little. Said this place was safer than the world outside. Asher's throat tightened. The name. Delia, he repeated. Delia Moore? Micah nodded. You knew her? To my foundation. She came years ago. Applied for help. I never met her in person, but the name stuck. She had a file. Micah said nothing, just waited. Asher ran a hand over his face. She was denied. It wasn't personal. There were so many applications. She said the world had more doors than keys, Micah murmured. She stopped knocking. Asher excused himself that afternoon, needing answers. He drove back into the city, to his company's archives. The security guard raised an eyebrow at the billionaire entering unannounced in yesterday's clothes. I need a file from the 2014 Langford Foundation intake program, Asher said. Within an hour, he found it. Delia Moore, single mother, minor criminal record for trespassing, denied for lack of verification and missing documents. Attached was a brief note from his assistant at the time. Low priority. Advise no further contact. Asher stared at the words until they blurred. He whispered, I was the one who signed it. That night, back in the garden, he sat beside Maribel while Lila napped under a quilt nearby. Micah played quietly with sticks, building a small tower. You knew, Asher said without preamble. Maribel nodded. You needed to see it, not be told. Why didn't you say something earlier? Because you weren't listening yet. Asher looked at Micah. He could be my don't rush to label what hasn't been asked. He is a boy with hurt. You are a man with guilt. That doesn't make one the answer to the other. Asher lowered his head. What do I do with this? Maribel stood. Start by not walking away this time. In the distance, Lila stirred and whispered in her sleep, Micah, stay. Neither of them heard her, but the night held its breath all the same. Micah sat on the garden steps as twilight stretched long across the earth. Lila, blanket over her legs, joined him, slowly easing herself down beside him. Did you always live with Maribel? She asked. Micah nodded. Since I was 5. Before that, my mom and I moved a lot, mostly shelters, sometimes the street. Lila looked at him, eyes wide. Weren't you scared? Yeah, he said, but not all the time. My mom made games out of things. When we had no food, she'd pretend we were on a survival mission. When we slept on benches, she called them sky beds. Lila smiled faintly. She sounds smart. Micah nodded, a distant ache in his eyes. She got tired, though. Said asking for help felt like screaming into a well. Maribel was the only one who heard. Later that evening, Asher returned to his home office. He sat at his desk and opened the company's internal system. With a few keystrokes, he searched for Delia Moore. The file appeared. Scanned documents, case notes, and a short sentence under the decision section. Denied due to incomplete documentation and unverifiable history. Asher clicked deeper. A memo surfaced, dated 8 years ago. Mr. Langford, re this intake. She has a criminal trespass on record and is flagged as unstable. I recommend closure. AR, a signature, his. He sat back, hands trembling. He hadn't just overlooked her, he had dismissed her, and in doing so, he may have sealed her fate. And Micah's. A memory surfaced. A long meeting room. 24 applicants reviewed in 1 hour. Delia's name mentioned once. Troubled. He'd nodded, moved on. And now, years later, the boy who might be her son had led him to his daughter's first step. Asher's phone buzzed. A message from Lila. Micah says skybeds are real. Can we stay one more night? He stared at the screen, then closed his laptop. Yes, he whispered. The next morning, Asher stood at the garden's edge where Micah was feeding birds with Lila. Micah, Asher said quietly, can we talk? Micah turned, wary. I need to say something. About your mom. Micah didn't answer. She came to my foundation. I was the one who denied her application. I told my staff she wasn't a priority. Micah blinked. I know. Maribel told me. You knew? Micah nodded. I saw your name on the form years ago. I just didn't want you to tell me who you used to be. I wanted to see who you are now. Asher stepped back slightly, stunned. I'm sorry. Micah looked away. Sorry doesn't change what happened, but maybe it changes what comes next. They sat on the porch steps after lunch. Lila drew in her sketchbook. Maribel watered herbs nearby. You could come live with us, Asher said. Micah gave a small smile. You want to save me. I want to give you something. Better. Micah shook his head. This is better. Here people ask before they take, and listen before they fix. I belong where people are still forgotten. That's where I'm needed. Asher opened his mouth, then closed it. Micah added softer, but thank you for seeing me. Really seeing me. That's all I ever wanted. Lila looked up. You'll come back, right? Micah smiled at her. If you ever forget how to believe, I'll probably be nearby. The wind carried his words, weaving them gently through. The garden like a promise. Lila stood barefoot on the dewy grass behind Maribel's cottage, her arms outstretched like wings. Her steps were uneven, her legs still shaky, but the determination in her face held steady. Each movement was a quiet act of rebellion against everything she'd been told was impossible. Micah stood a few feet away, counting aloud. That's 8 steps. You did 8. Lila beamed. Can I try 9 tomorrow? 9.5, he teased. Asher watched from the porch with a thermos of tea in his hand. For once, his mind wasn't racing. There was only stillness and awe. Later, Lila joined a nearby community arts center. With Maribel's help, she began drawing again. Movement came slowly, but joy returned quickly. One afternoon, Asher received a call from a local journalist. Word of Lila's recovery had spread through the center. Mr. Langford, your daughter's story is inspiring. Would you be willing to go on record? The woman asked. Asher hesitated. She's not a story, she's a child. Of course, the reporter said quickly, but stories like hers give hope. That night, Asher brought it up to Lila. They want to write about you. Lila looked thoughtful. Only if I get to talk about Micah and Maribel. You really want to? She nodded. Some people need to know that help doesn't always come in white coats. The school held a spring showcase in the auditorium. Lila asked to be part of it, as a speaker. Asher stood in the wings, watching her take slow, deliberate steps across the polished wood floor to the microphone. She looked out at the crowd, took a shaky breath, and began. 2 years ago, I couldn't walk. Then someone believed I could. Not a doctor, a boy in an alley, and a woman who knew my heart better than any machine. The room was silent. I don't remember the moment my legs stopped working, but I remember the moment they listened again, and it didn't start with medicine. It started with being seen. Applause swelled, but Lila didn't flinch. She found Asher in the wings and smiled. Asher scanned the crowd at the end of the show and saw him, Micah, leaning against the back wall, hands in his pockets, hoodie pulled low. Asher started toward him, but Micah slipped into the side hallway. By the time Asher reached the door, the boy was gone. He stepped outside, heart pounding, but there was no sign. Just a chalk drawing on the sidewalk near the school's exit. A stick figure girl standing beside a crooked tree, and a small boy with wings. Later that night, Lila found something in her backpack, a folded note written in careful block letters. If you ever forget how to believe, I'll probably be nearby. M. She held it to her chest. He was here, she told her dad. He came. Asher nodded, sitting beside her on her bed. He always said he would be. Lila looked out the window, past the streetlights and the trees. I think he helps people who stop believing, then moves on. Asher pulled the blanket over her. Then we were lucky he found us first. Outside, the wind stirred, as if in quiet agreement. The phone rang just after sunrise. Asher, still in his robe, answered groggily. Langford. This is Julia Mendez. I'm a social worker in Northcrest, the voice said. Sorry to call so early. We've got a girl, 9 years old. She hasn't spoken since a fire took her parents last year, but last night she asked for someone. Asher's heart skipped. Who? She didn't say a name, just said she wanted the boy who hums. Like wind in the trees. Asher closed his eyes. Micah. Do you know him? Yes, Asher whispered. I do. 3 weeks later, a new wing opened at the Langford Children's Clinic. It was small, only 4 rooms, but bright, with soft yellow walls and vines curling up the windows. At the ceremony, Asher stepped to the podium. I've built many things, he said, most with bricks. This one was built with belief. He looked toward the plaque at the entrance, Micah's room. No child should be overlooked, no voice unheard. When the ribbon was cut, Lila stood beside him without her cane. She didn't walk far, but she walked proudly. That evening, Lila gave her father a folded sheet of paper. Inside was a drawing, 3 figures beneath a great tree. Lila with her arms out, Maribel beside her, and a small boy with wings and stars in his hoodie. He was the first person who saw me, Lila said. Asher ran a finger over the image, speechless. He sees people others miss, she added. And when he sees them, they change. Asher looked up at her. So did I. Days later, Asher returned to Maribel's garden alone. The path was overgrown now, the wind louder through the trees. The cottage door stood open. Inside, the shelves were dusted but empty. No jars, no kettle, no Maribel, only a wooden bench on the porch and a faint scent of lavender. He sat, and for the first time, he didn't ask questions, didn't search for answers. He simply listened. The trees creaked, the chimes stirred, and the wind impossibly hummed. In a different city, under an overpass lit by yellow streetlights, Micah sat with a new child. She didn't speak, just trembled, arms wrapped around her knees. Micah didn't ask what happened. He sat beside her, pulled his hoodie tight and hummed, a soft, low melody like leaves brushing stone. The girl leaned into him, just barely, and though no one saw it, not even the sky, something broke open inside her. It wasn't loud. It never is. Some say healing begins in hospitals. But what if it starts in the forgotten corners, in whispered songs, and in the steps we don't see? The Steps We Don't See isn't just a story about a girl who walked again. It's about the boy who taught her heart how to move first. What if the person who saves you isn't the one wearing a white coat, but the one who simply refuses to walk away? What would you do if the miracle you were chasing turned out to be someone you once ignored? Let us know in the comments. Have you ever been helped by someone you least expected, or been the one who showed up when no one else did? If this story moved you, stirred something in your chest, or made you think differently about the people society overlooks, subscribe to the channel now for more powerful and emotional stories like this one. Hit the like button, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and join our community of people who believe that sometimes the quietest voices carry the greatest healing.